Okay, Alweena, you're very welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. So,
Thank you.
just maybe to let the listeners know who you are and some of the things that you do. Would you mind just giving a short introduction just about you and your work?
Yeah, I suppose it all started when I trained as a PE teacher. So I've always been interested in sports and PE. But I ended up having an accident and a car accident and broke my neck and back. And so I trained to teach 11 to 18-year-olds, but because of and teach PE. But because of the car accident, I ended up teaching 5 to 11-year-olds, and I taught for 23 years. But I never really trained to teach reading or young children. So, like most of us, we do what we're good at. So I was good at teaching PE. So what I used to do was teach a lot of, nearly every single day, I would do PE with the class. And and the children did well with me, considering I hadn't had that specific training for teaching early years. And then 16 years on, I ended up in a school that had 5 parallel classes, and and the head teacher said to me, what is it that you do that helps children? She said there were two things that she noticed because she was comparing them that help children. Your children always read really well and they're confident. And so I thought, what is it that I do? Because I don't spend a lot of time teaching them to read. I'm not actually that good. And then I said, well, I do a lot of PE. And is it that? Is like physical literacy, does it have any impact on literacy? So that was one aspect. So I had got this question asked. Uh, Another aspect was my own son was very, very intelligent, but moved around a lot, was always getting in trouble, didn't seem to achieve his full potential. The report said could do better, doesn't concentrate, blah, 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 blah. So I was trying to work out what was going on with him as well. Why wasn't he? Because I knew he was really, really bright. And at the same time, at that time, I had another boy in my class called Mohsin. And Mohsin was a really intelligent boy, really intelligent, but he couldn't hold a pencil properly. So he wrote really lightly and it took him a long time to write. And he was really intelligent. And so I thought, my God, this boy can't put down on paper what is in his head. And I looked at his records, and there was a great big thick file, and that thick file said that he had loads of retained primitive reflexes. And I remember looking at this thick file and at the end of it saying, and what am I supposed to do? What should I do to help him? Because the diagnosis was there, but there was no help. So I had these three things happening parallel. But it was my son who spurred me on, because I was on a kinesiology course and he was 15, and he on that day I was on that course, I happened to be sitting next to a lady who really knew about primitive reflexes and was working with them. And his foot got run over by a bus that day. And at that point, I realized that this agitation, this lack of concentration, this lack of attention wasn't just about academic things, but actually it was a life thing. Something terrible could have happened to him. And I thought, so anyway, what happened was I had a conversation with her and she said, I know exactly what's wrong with him. It's his primitive reflexes. And so I ended up going to her and she addressed his reflexes. And within 3 months, he was like a different boy. Like, honestly, the change was immense. Along with that, she also checked auditory processing and how the frequencies that he could hear. And she said to me, if you there are some frequencies he can't hear that are high frequencies, and he will be prone to depression if you don't add this frequency. And I thought, oh my God, how is that possible? But then she showed me other charts where, because of the different frequencies that people can't hear, she said you can chart and see what kind of illnesses they can have. So I was really interested. So anyway, with all of these things that coming together at the same time, I ended up thinking, what is it that I do? Is it addressing the physical literacy? Obviously, addressing primitive reflexes addresses physical literacy. Is it that? And I ended up doing PhD research to see if movement, addressing primitive reflexes and physical literacy, and sound therapy, addressing auditory processing, would help a child to learn.
And boom.
I, I was led to. I kind of was led to it. I was never planned it.
Brilliant. And just in terms of just in case some people don't know, first of all, what physical literacy is, what primitive reflexes are, could you just give a little bit of a brief explanation
Yeah. So
of those?
physical literacy is your ability to move your body. Okay, makes sense. But actually, when you think about it, it's like we are this energy being, or this brain in this body, in a shell. It's like a car. It's how you're able to drive your body and whether you have complete control of it. And you can do a certain sequence, and simple things like just moving your arm, then your leg, your arm, simple things. But to be able to sequence your body, and if you're not able to control your physical literacy, if your physical literacy is poor, if you're not able to do these simple things that you should be able to do, then that translates into abstract sequencing. So, for instance, the ability to learn times table is linked in with the ability to sequence, because the timetable is just a sequence, isn't it? So, if you can sequence your body concretely, that has an impact on the ability to abstractly sequence. So, that's physical literacy, is how comfortable you're in your body, and it's very much linked in with balance, because we as humans are the only animal that are upright, and so we're constantly fighting gravity. So if our balance is poor because our physical literacy is poor, then just we're upright and we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe at all. And so we lack that confidence in ourselves and our ability to move around. And how I saw that was, many years later, after the research, my second husband had a stroke, and he had a stroke around the cerebellum area, and one of the things that he lost was his sense of balance. And he was a confident man, and he suddenly became really like timid, and every time he stood up, it was like he was in fear. And it was interesting, when we sorted out the balance again, the confidence returned. So it was so interesting. So the ability to balance is part of physical literacy, and it impacts in ways that you have no idea. For example, I had an 11-year-old. I was teaching an 11-year-old who used to be afraid of coming across a road bridge. Well, a road bridge is, stable.
Yeah.
And his father had to bring him across the bridge. And I thought to myself, wow, because he's going to go to high school, and imagine if his father's having to walk him to school. So all I did with him was teach him to do jumps of little blocks of, in PE. And what I was doing was addressing his balance while he was doing PE. And once he got confident, he was able to walk across the bridge. So basically, there was an innate part of him that thought, oh, this is not safe for me because my balance is poor. So that's physical literacy. But physical literacy is affected by primitive reflexes. Primitive reflexes are there from the beginning, from 0 to about 1.5, to make sure we survive. So they're like angels in the early years, because they're helpers. But if they're not integrated, they're like rascals. So if I can give you one example, the moral reflex is there at the time of birth, should integrate very quickly, because when the baby comes through, the mother nature doesn't want baby to be all sloppy and taking long deep breaths. Wants the baby alert to see, hear, and take short breaths, so that the breathing mechanism kicks in very quickly. So mother nature is making sure that this baby comes out, it's going to breathe, which is brilliant. And then everything, and that reflex is integrated through certain specific movements that all children do. But if that movement isn't allowed, that reflex doesn't get integrated. Now this child will be in high alert. Everything will be always in this fight and flight system, which means that he can hear too much, he can see too much, he can feel too much, and everything is just going, and he can't focus, because if you're in fight and flight, the eyes work on a peripheral way. So they keep scanning to see, is everything okay? Is everything okay? And what does a teacher always say? Look at me, focus. But the eyes are actually saying, no, 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 because I need to make sure everything around me is okay. If he hears a pencil drop behind him, he'll be like looking at the pencil, making sure it's not an attack, by which time he's lost the thread of what the teacher is saying, and now he's like, behind. So these reflexes are key to survival, and if they're not integrated, they can cause huge, and there's loads of reflexes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a comprehensive explanation.
Yeah. Well,
There's a lot in it.
It's comprehensive, and it affects every single part.
Yeah. And from addressing it, from the research you've done, and that you had to integrate that with your own son as well.
And actually myself, because what happened when I had that car, so this is, sometimes they can pop up again.
Yeah.
When you've had a trauma. So when I had my car accident, my primitive reflex, my moral reflex kicked in. So as an adult, how you see it is that you're not very flexible, and you are constantly, because you're in fight and flight, you need to know where everything is. You don't delegate, because if you delegate to somebody, you don't know what they've done. You want to know exactly where everything is. So when you have a child, and then when I had a child, it was like double fight and flight, double. I was scanning for myself all the time and scanning for him. So I remember the first time he slept through the night, I thought, oh my God, is he all right? Is he breathing? You're in this kind of tense.
Yeah.
And then the child feels it as well, because you're constantly watching out for them, because you're watching out for yourself. And I was 37 when that reflex was integrated, because you can do specific exercises, and you can use kinesiology to integrate it. And I was like a different person, because I used to think, why are all these mums so calm and relaxed, and why the baby's so calm and relaxed? But because I was hyper, my baby was hyper, so he was the one that became hyper and had the issues.
Yeah. And what tangible, other than just feeling relaxed, what differences did you feel when that reflex was integrated?
Well, first of all, I could delegate. I didn't need to know where everything was at all times. I could relax in terms of, I could sit down, because I could be up in the morning and I just keep going all day. My sleep becomes better, because I wasn't like sleeping, if it's like you're in a war-torn zone, so you're like listening with one ear. I just became a more relaxed person, and that changed everything, because it helped. So my I had two more sons after that, were not like him, because I was a relaxed parent, more relaxed with them. Yeah.
So the power's in the parent.
Yeah. Look after yourself, sort yourself out. Or
Absolutely.
you pass it on.
Brilliant. And just going back to that, to your accident, if you don't mind, just for a moment. Correct me if I'm wrong. You to spend a time in traction. Was that correct?
Yes. Um, so, it, I mean, I have to say that it was one of the best things that happened to me,
Why,
really.
why so,
Uh,
Alweena?
because it changed everything about me and where the trajectory I was going,
Yeah.
where I was going, what I was planning to do. It shifted everything because actually I had a near death experience. So I came in with another perspective. That was one thing. And that perspective, when I came through, I'd broken my neck and my back. And somehow I knew I should not have an operation. And so even though they wanted to operate, I refused. I mean, I was only 21, and imagine saying to the doctors, no, I'm not having an operation. So what they did was they put skull traction in, which is like two metal bars there, put weights at the end of it, and lay me down for 3 months. And so for 3 months, I was just staring at the ceiling because there was no TV up there. And I was able to read through a glass shelf that put book upside down on. And that's all I did for 3 months. And that really taught me how to be present. Because if I had known, I didn't know how long I was going to be like that. But if I had known I would have to be like that for 3 months, I would have gone absolutely crazy. But what I did was each day I would wake up in the morning and my aim was to get back to sleep in the night. So was just to eat, to read, and to be, do you know what I mean? Just be present with each day. And that's where I really learned my ability to be completely present. Uh, it changed me as a person, obviously, and yeah. So when I came out of it, uh, I was in some ways I was more a compassionate person as well. You know,
To
the whole I was completely changed.
yeah, to yourself or to others or both? Or,
Um, to myself, to others. That the accident was interesting because I did, you know, it wasn't pure sailing. I mean, I was left with a lot of pain. After 3 months of traction, I was put in a kind of a thing here, all right down to my waist for about 6 months, and had a neck collar. Um, and then I had a pain for about 10 years, lots of pain. And I came across kinesiology, and in that session, the kinesiologist said to me, I need to forgive my mother-in-law who was in the car accident with me. And I said, well, why would I need to do that? She said, the lack of forgiveness is the pain in your body. And I thought, this is mad. But anyway, finally, I was able to forgive her. And when I sat up after about 45 minutes, oh my God, I would say about 70% of the pain left because it was lodged into my body. And that taught me the power of forgiveness.
and what is your understanding of, or what is forgiveness? What's your understanding of it? It's
My understanding of it from that, if you remember, I was in
yeah,
pain, is that when you don't forgive another, it's not it's not them, because my thing was I wanted to be right. My mother-in-law had been not too brilliant with me in her ignorance, because and it wasn't her fault,
mm,
because the doctors had said there was nothing wrong with me. I wasn't very good at sorting out bearing pain. And I had walked around for 7 days after the accident. When I came back to England, they found out I had a broken back and neck. So she just thought I was just all right. But I wanted to be right because I thought this person had treated me badly and her treatment was not good. So for me, when I forgave her, that I was in pain, she was not in pain. I was the one in pain. So with lack of forgiveness, it's I have found for myself and for others actually that it's you're the person in pain. The other person might have forgotten the incident completely.
yeah. And how did you do it?
Um, you know, the hardest thing about forgiveness is choosing to do it. The actual forgiveness is not hard,
Yeah, it's
but
that decision.
choosing to do it, choosing. And the other thing is not wanting to be right.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I wanted to be right that I was judging her. You know, I wanted I thought she had done something that was not good.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be right about that. I wanted to keep
Mhm.
the evidence. It
Yes,
was like I was keeping the evidence and judgment, and I was judging her as well.
and that stored as pain in your body. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying? It was not really about the other person.
it's never about the other person.
Mhm. And
Because that, if you think about it, she did what she did because she thought I had nothing wrong with me.
yeah,
And she made me do loads of stuff for her. Like, I mean, like, I used to have to keep making coffee for her. And coffee, I was in Algeria, you see, and you
yeah,
had to go and light up this little stove and scoot down. And it wasn't like pressing a button. It was hard. It was painful for me. So I thought, why was she should have been giving me the coffee, but I was in pain. But she didn't know I was in pain because the doctor said, oh, there's nothing wrong with her. So you
she
see,
might,
sometimes a person is, from their perspective, what they're doing is okay for them.
yeah. It's a it's a deep topic anyway. Forgiveness.
It's a whole topic.
It's a whole topic, yeah. But even just to touch on that again, like, okay, you made that decision, let's say in this instance, to forgive. Was that done from? Is that just you saying, okay, I forgive you? Because a lot of people say, okay, I forgive you, but you can see in the life, or you can see in the body that, well, maybe that's not the case. Like, is it done in the head or the heart, or from your experience? I know everybody might have their own ways of doing it.
Yeah, from my experience, it's I always say it's with the forgiveness of God. Like, so the forgiveness of the heart,
Yeah,
the forgiveness with love. If there's the forgiveness of the head, a lot of time people think they're forgiven. But if there's a charge to it, if there's an emotion that arises, you haven't completely forgiven. And I think part of that forgiveness of the heart is saying to the self, I am not God to judge another.
mm,
You know, it's not my place to judge another. Everybody does whatever they do out of their own experience and perception and all of that. Um, and sometimes we don't want to forgive because it's evidence that somebody's done something to us that's not right. And there was I had a lady once that was finding it really, really hard to forgive. And what was happening with her, I mean, she it was, it was a big topic. It was abuse of sort. But what was happening with her was she was, all her joints were hurting. And we I work with a circle called harmonizing circle. And in circle we came to the conclusion, or she came to the conclusion, that the lack of forgiveness was evidence, and the evidence was sitting in her joint. And so when she was able to forgive, the joint pain left her. And I said, why don't you put the evidence on a piece of paper? So when she transferred that evidence to piece of, it's always evidence. We want to keep evidence against somebody else. Somebody did this to me. Somebody did that to me. Somebody did. But the problem is, like this woman, like myself, the evidence sits in your body and is pain to yourself. So that's for that's the difference. And the other thing is, it's always easier to forgive another than to forgive the self.
so
And
it's,
I had an experience where I had to go through that self forgiveness, which took me a. I was easy. It was easier to forgive others, and the self forgiveness was to do with. I thought I'd caused the death of my brother because I'd lent him a car, it wasn't insured, and all of this kind of thing. And it, after about 8 years, it just sat on me one day that it was like an epiphany that who am I? Who was I to be in charge of anybody's life? Who did I think I was that I could have saved him that day? The arrogance of trying to play God.
Yeah.
And that allowed me to forgive myself. I thought that was his destiny, that was written, that was his soul journey, or whatever. Who was I to think that I could have changed that?
So you're allowing
Um,
that person, or you're giving that person the responsibility for their own actions to a degree,
yeah,
and obviously taking responsibility for your own.
yeah.
Uh, Yeah. So does, from your perspective, does because forgiveness can be quite a, I think, a very controversial topic for some people, particularly, let's say, in case of abuse and things like that. Are you saying that it's you're okay, you're forgiving that person, you're forgiving yourself, but are you condoning that action, or is it more the your perception, or the your emotional residue around that?
You're freeing yourself. You're letting go of the charge. You're not
Yeah,
saying that what that
yeah,
person did was right.
yeah,
An action is an action.
yeah,
What that person did was not right, but you're letting go of the charge. You're letting go of the angst. You're freeing yourself because maybe that person is not even thinking about it. This lady that I was talking about, it was the pain she was getting was because her partner had abused her daughter. And what was interesting with this scenario was the daughter had completely forgiven and was not holding all that pain, agony in her own body. But obviously the mother was, because there's a part of her made thinking, I could have, perhaps I could have, I don't know, I missed something or something. So she was holding it as evidence. So that was very interesting that the person who had the actual situation was able to, and she was a young girl, but my God, she was completely free of that,
yeah,
of the ball and chain of that thing that was happening. It was just amazing to see that she freed herself. It's all forgiveness is always about freeing yourself.
yeah, yeah. So we could talk all day about it.
That's
And
worth doing, isn't it? Freeing yourself.
absolutely, from ourselves,
Yeah.
and that, if that forms like a substantial part of the training that you do with practitioners. Like you have a school, a college, you train.
Yeah, so when I ended up doing that research
Yeah,
and found that actually, sorting out auditory processing and uh, sorting out primitive reflexes really helps children to learn,
yeah,
I thought I can't stay in teaching because now I know a truth. And so I went on to run a center called the Child Center and helped loads of children individually. But then there were too many children, and there were loads of children that were helped. And so I ended up putting down a method called the Child Center method, which is using all the different techniques I'd learned, and I train people to use those techniques and that method. But part of that is this the process of forgiveness as well, because it's all about self-development. Because what we're trying to do is attune these children to their full potential. But
yeah,
to do that in the child center method, we have to the practitioner has to attune themselves to their full potential, and that's by developing. Part of that is not forgiveness, but it's actually a technique called Ho'oponopono, transmuting stuff. And so, yeah, it's a whole method and a whole way of being, so that if you attune to your own full potential, then you're able to help others attune to their full potential.
yeah. You're opening that space,
Yeah,
so you're walking your talk, so to speak.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Being it, you're shining the light on you go and switch a light on, that light is for you, but it shines on the other as well. So you know, being the truth of what you're trying to do, really.
Yeah. And have you noticed that from your own perspective, like when you're doing work, it's, let's just say when you walk your talk, you know, of course you have to do the work and all that, but it flows a lot easier.
Yeah,
Find yourself.
and it's also quicker. It is just like if you put the light on for yourself and another person walks in, the light is on for them as well. So the resonance of what the frequency of what I carry, or the resonance of what
Yeah.
I carry, helps another, because the resonance always lifts up to the highest frequency. It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
So it's just, if you are being that resonance and that frequency, people feel that and sense that, and you can lift that up. And that's why the circle work, the Ho'oponopono harmonizing circle, works like that. You work in a group, and the lowest resonance is lifted up through the highest frequency. So
I think in psychological speak, it's you know, it's the mirror neurons, where
the
you're
okay.
mirror neurons, like, so you're reflecting back. And let's say if you're happy, if you're the person who's happy and the most dominant in that environment, it's reflecting that back to, let's say, the person in front of them, and then they're more likely to come on board, so to speak, you know,
Yeah,
or absorb that. But when you're, as you say, when you're in that state, or that emotional or mental state, you know, you can bring that person to that place more readily. Doesn't mean obviously it always
absolutely.
happens, but
Yeah,
as you said, it's just bringing up that frequency. Or
yeah. And that I had to practice that with my second son, because he had has has bipolar, and he sometimes he could sink into this really dark space, and I and his dad would kind of jump into the dark space with him. So it was like being a companion. But the problem with his dad was that he would then feel all the pain in his own body. So he started getting depressed. And I remember one time saying to his dad, look, it's like he's in a deep, dark well. And if you jump in with him, you're keeping him company in that deep, dark well. But I'm up here and I'm saying, look, come here. Come here. This is where you need to be. I said, if you come and stand with me, he will want to come there. And the interesting thing was that my son said to me at one, this was previously, he said, you know that hook that you're holding me up with, you know you're not strong enough to hold me up. He said, let go of that because you're not strong enough. And that's what made me jump out of that dark place and stand at the top and say, here I am, here I am. So it's like that. It's like the light. The light is always stronger than dark. I really do believe that. The dark is an absence of light. So,
yeah,
if people sort of say, be the light. And it seems a cliche, but actually that's what I try and do. So, like, the moth comes to the light. So
yeah,
the pulling people up just by being that, so light or truth or
yeah. And
giving or more compassionate love.
the Ho'oponopono is part of the practice you use to do
Yeah,
that for
that's
yourself.
yeah.
Will you do that for yourself first and foremost?
Yeah, because the Huna tradition of Ho'oponopono was that if there was angst anywhere, that they would sit in a circle and they would all forgive each other, accept forgiveness, give forgiveness. There'd be, the community would work together like that. So nobody was busy judging. Part of the forgiveness is stepping back from constant judgment. So yeah, it's all part of it, and that's all part of the child center method as well. In that you're trying to just raise your own frequency, your own resonance, so that as a therapist you've got to walk your talk. So when you're working with the method, it's not just like do this, do this, do this. You have to be it.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
fundamental principle and or philosophy.
absolutely. It's a big journey.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? Yeah, and how long is that journey? Can anyone do it?
Anybody can do it because we are all able to do it. How long is that journey?
Well,
Is how
yeah,
long is a piece of
yeah.
string?
Well, what I really meant is like, how long is that if they were to do it with you? Like,
All right, if they wanted to do it, it's about an 18-month course.
yeah,
But and some people, because it's not just about me teaching you how to use these different methods,
yeah,
the self development has to come through it as well, because it's like attuning to your full potential.
yeah.
um, and that was really important to me as a person, because so I have dyslexia. Now dyslexia is not what, I'm sorry, but it's not what the there's different ways of having dyslexia. So um, so when I was at school, I did okay. Then when I got to my O levels, I did okay. I just did okay, and I used to think I'm smarter than this. And it was when I went to PE college. In fact, I just scraped through to PE college, and I was put in the certificate group. The certificate group was the dunce group. You know, the I wasn't even allowed to do a
I don't
degree.
know. Is that politically correct anymore?
No, I know that's really bad. No, but that's how I found myself.
Okay.
I used to feel I was like, I'm clever, but why can't I,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not clear. But anyway, um, it was the C group. And it was certificate group, it was a C group. Um, anyway, after a year of being at PE college, and I was doing all this movement. After that 1 year, at the end of the year, I did so well. They said, we're moving you to the D group, the degree group.
Yeah.
It was actually higher.
Yeah.
So that was my first encounter with how you develop your physical literacy and your brain kicks in.
So the only
And you
thing
know
you did
what?
different, sorry to
Sorry.
interrupt, but the only thing you did differently there was you were moving more,
I
as
was
in,
doing all of the different sports, swimming, dance, national dance. I was developing my physical
yeah,
literacy. And do you know what? I had gone in with as a C, like the lower achiever, and I left as one of the top achievers. And in fact, uh, I nearly got first class degree, and the only reason missed out by 1%, and the only reason I didn't get my degree as I should have, as a first class degree, was my brother just died in a car accident. So I was not able to really
yeah,
revise and stuff, but I still did well enough to just miss out from first class. So imagine my journey for 4 years, and all that was developing my physical literacy. So that happened to me personally.
yes,
So my form, and this lack of physical literacy can also show up as a dyslexia, because if you have poor balance, that can affect the way the head sits on the body and the way the eyes work, and so you don't read as well, etc. Anyway, my form of dyslexia is a different way, where I'm very right brained, and I don't like little details, and so schools are very detailed, and so that was why it was hard for me to learn. But when I got to age 46, I really wanted to challenge myself, and it went. And so this part of this research, the PhD, was to achieve my full potential. And I remember my ex-husband saying to me, "Well, you're doing all this research. Why don't you, um, you know, do something concrete like a PhD?" And I said, "Oh, I don't think I can do it." And I remember him saying to me, "So you are trying to get children to achieve their full potential, but you're not ready to achieve your full potential." And I thought, right, I'll show him. So
challenge accepted.
yeah, so it's, any, so I am labeled a dyslexic, but look at what I was able to achieve, and anybody can achieve it. It's just motivation. I was highly motivated because of my son, but motivation and focus.
Yeah.
um, so and a willingness to let go of programs.
What do you
Now,
mean
I
by
had to let go of the program of I'm not good enough. Because I'm not good enough to do a PhD. I had to
yeah.
let go of that program.
And do you feel that, or do you think that because of dyslexia and all the rest of that, it affected your thinking, your self-esteem, what you would or would not do in life?
Well, my
Mhm.
dyslexia is one of my biggest gifts because I can see the big picture.
Yeah,
Okay, I can't see all the little details, but I can see the big picture. So that is what enabled me to develop a method to look at, oh, put this together, put this together, put this together. And then I've got this great, big, fabulous method using science and energy work and movement.
yeah,
And okay, in my manuals, you might find a couple of spelling mistakes and stuff like that. But my brain doesn't like to focus on the little
yeah,
stuff. It likes the big picture. So actually, I had to. But you're right. I had to. I had to embrace it and
yeah,
say, does it really matter if I'm not that brilliant at spelling? And that I write sometimes as if another person can read my mind.
yeah,
Does it really matter?
yeah,
And so from my own journey, I did actually go and lecture for 3 years to teachers because of to look at diversity and to look at children and look at their strengths and focus on their strengths
yeah,
rather than. So dyslexia is you're a very right brain person, so schools are very left brain. And I saw that with my three boys because I had two, the eldest and the second one were very right brained. So a right brain person is like, they need to know that you're building a house. But schools would start by brick, by brick, by brick, brick, and then they'd say, oh, that's a house. Well, if you told me if it was a house, I could have focused on it better.
yeah,
Whereas my youngest son was left brain. So it doesn't matter. He could sit and look brick, 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 brick. Oh, that's built into a house. And so they classified him as a high achiever. But he wasn't a high achiever. He just could function in the way schools teach.
yeah. So
And the
basically,
other two were as bright as him.
yeah. So it's just it's everyone basically everyone learns differently, and these things like dyslexia and all the rest. It's a I think it's Richard Bandler says, learning differences. We learn
Yes. Yeah,
differently.
reordered. They're not disordered, they're reordered.
Yeah,
And I remember when I was lecturing about focusing on children's achievements rather than what they can't do. And it was to teachers, and I was talking, and suddenly the whole lecture was about focus on what children can do. And this young lady said, "Oh, you got a spelling mistake there." And I just stood there for ages, and I said, "That's because I'm dyslexic." I think the whole group got the point of it.
yeah,
So yeah, if you explain to a child with dyslexia how they work and how they function, of course they do need to read. But if you sort out physical literacy, you sort out balance, you sort out their primitive reflexes. As I said, I never had problem teaching children to read. Bring me a child who can't read, and I can.
sort them out.
By movement, by not doing more
Yeah,
reading, you don't do more of what you can't do. You fix the underlying issue, which is physical literacy. Physical literacy impacts literacy.
yeah, it works.
It works. It worked on you remember me from the C group
Yeah,
to the D group degree?
yeah, and that's part
It
that.
happened to me.
Yeah, and you have another thing as well as the child center method training. You have the simple physical literacy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that
The simple physical
specific
literacy.
movement program,
Yeah. So if you
which is
don't want to train as a child centered method practitioner, which is using science and energy medicine and movement, I have simple physical literacy, which is for parents, for teachers, for any adults working with children, which is just basically you are working with affecting their physical literacy. And it's
yeah,
a program that I used for the research. It's validated by research, and you can actually become a simple uh, physical literacy practitioner, coach.
yeah,
So you can go and work with groups of children or individual children, or go into schools and work with children.
or
And
use it on yourself,
sorry,
or use it on yourself.
oh, use it. Oh, when I was doing my PhD, I had to keep using it on myself. because there's certain movements that can really help you to focus.
Yeah.
One of them is called simple brain yoga, and I used to find when I was writing that for 2 hours I could really focus well. So I used it on myself as well. Yeah.
And even for parents, like for themselves, it does help resolve. It can resolve a lot of emotional
Yeah.
issues on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so you can address like the moral reflex, and
Yeah.
the problem with the moral reflex is it's the one that, because you're in the fight and flight, any little extra drop of water in your bucket can really, throw you over the edge. So by just doing those simple exercises, you can integrate that reflex, and you're not in that you get out of fight and flight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But like anything, it takes a bit of practice, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. But it's fun, it's a fun way of doing it. And I
Yeah.
just find with children who suddenly can navigate their own body, can use it in the way they want, they get so much joy in it. There's a lot of joy in it,
Yeah.
because the ability to control your own body gives you self confidence, and it gives you joy.
Yeah, and they're open to trying new things and get
Yeah,
not as you said from the start, wanting to get things right, but opening to just being curious again.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the difference between physical literacy and physical education, because you're in physical literacy, you're only battling against yourself, so to speak, so it's fine. But sometimes in PE you're put into teams, and then I once had a young girl who was having an issue at school, and it was because of hockey. And
Right.
she said, I love playing hockey, but why do we have to battle against each other? She hated the fighting, the lack of cooperation. It was an
Yeah.
interesting thing that I had to work with.
She just wanted to enjoy the hockey field, not compete
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, because the problem with physical education is the good children become better,
Yeah.
whereas physical literacy, you start them at their level and keep improving at their own level, at their own pace. So the
Yeah.
simple physical literacy literally is simple movements that children would naturally do, like spinning and rolling and
Yeah.
jumping and climbing and stuff like that. That is a natural. It's not like you're trying to get an implement and try and hit a ball with it, because
Yeah.
if you can't control your arm, then you put a tennis racket in it, and then you're trying to hit a ball with, it's
Yeah. You're
difficult.
fighting against your
Yeah,
fighting against your body. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it can all be simple, and it can all be very a lot of fun.
Yeah, and simple is sensory integration movement program for learning enhancement. And can I just say one thing? The problem is we don't let children move enough nowadays, and they don't move enough because they're just in front of a screen, or they're not out. They don't play outside like they used to. We're just worried about, I don't know, somebody, you know their safety all the time. Just those kind of, it's we kind of hinder our children now.
Yeah.
We just don't give them enough space to move around in, and that's all they need. They need lots of space to move around with as a child, as a young child. Lots of playground time, an hour a day at least in the playground can help integrate these reflexes.
Yeah.
And then if they're not integrated when they go to school, plenty of PE, like what I was doing with my children, helps integrate the reflexes. But I mean, most schools do PE one time a week now. It's because the government are trying to say, oh, they can't read, so we'll give them more of reading. They can't do this, we'll give them more of that. But obviously, they can't do it. They can't do it. Do something different.
Yeah.
What's the underlying cause?
Well, if you ask a different question would be a start,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
yeah. If it ain't working, stop doing the same thing. You'll get the same result.
Exactly. It sounds like common sense, but unfortunately, it's not. But that's where the likes of your work comes in.
The likes of,
Your work comes in.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because simple physical literacy is just childhood activities that we all used to, when I was young, we all
Yeah.
used to do them.
Just organized ones.
Well, well, yes, just organized. It's a shame, isn't it, that we're having to organize play. It's organized play. And in
Yeah.
fact, I've developed a program now for 3 to 5 year olds called Simple Stars, so that they don't, if they've got reflex issues, and this isn't, you can't make them do specific movements, but you give them the environment to do
Yes.
the specific movement. So
So
you're
it's-
encouraging them. So when you take them in a playground, for instance, you're giving them the environment to integrate their reflexes, to develop their physical literacy. Because every time they're on a swing, or they're going round and round on a merry-go-round or whatever, except they've stopped the merry-go-rounds because it's too dangerous.
right.
What they're actually doing, or climbing, is developing their balance.
Yeah.
So when they develop their balance, they're affecting the way their eyes work, and they're affecting the way that a child can read. They found that when astronauts go up in space, that they lose a sense of balance, and they get something called space dyslexia. So they can't read as well. So come back, sort out their balance, and there you go. And there's a guy actually who created centers just by sorting out children's balance. It was like giving them, and then remediation. Of course, you do need to teach them how to read, but now they have the equipment to read.
Yeah.
Just by sorting out their balance, he was impacting the way they were reading.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so simple.
Boom, boom.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's simple when you know how.
It's simple when you know how. Yeah. It's like the forgiveness. It's simple. You just got to choose to do it. It
Exactly.
is, honestly, it's all to do with choice. And choice is the only thing we really have in life.
But we got to know we got we got to know that choice is available.
Yeah. I mean,
Or give
even when
ourselves
when we choose to think a thought, do you know there's a split second of choice before we start thinking that thought, where we can actually let the thought go. But once we start thinking it, we can't let it go. So there is a split second. That's what meditation is about. Split second where a thought comes in and you choose not to think it. Do you know you can choose not to think a thought? A lot of people don't know that. Try it.
how do you choose not to think a thought?
Pardon?
How do you choose not to think a thought?
I teach meditation to children,
Yeah.
and this is what I tell them, and they're so brilliant at it. So I say, when the thought comes in, because thoughts float in all the time.
Yeah.
You can't stop thoughts. We're supposed to have thoughts. So I just say to them, when the thought comes in, put it in a little bubble and burst it. And my God, these 6, 7 year olds are so good at doing that. Is if you can find that just little gap,
Yeah.
it's that first gap, and slowly you can start extending the gap. But there is a moment of choice where you choose to think it. If you don't choose quick enough, it's in, and then you gotta think it. It's something everybody should try. Next time a thought comes in, don't think, the thought's coming in, I've got no choice.
Yeah.
You've got choice. Choose not to think it.
Challenge of the week.
Challenge of the week, that's it. Yeah, see if in 7 days there's one thought that comes in and you choose not to think it and you didn't think it.
Boom. And that's how you build up that mental muscle. Like, and there are other ways other than the bubble, but like it's finding out what works, isn't it?
Yeah, bubble or disperse it like a cloud.
Yeah.
Or just say to yourself, I'm not choosing. I've chosen not to think it.
Yeah. Is that you? But you've developed quite a. Let me see. Do you think that requires, or because you've? Sorry, my thoughts are all jumbled here. Is that because, like, could you? People might say, like, well, that's because you've got great mental strength.
No, because I can teach 6, 7 year olds how to do that.
Yeah, so it's good. It's not, you're not doing it from, being really forceful with it. It's
No.
Yeah.
No, honestly.
Cool.
In fact, I remember I was at a wedding and a brain surgeon spoke to me about meditation and said, I've tried it, it doesn't work. And I sat with him in this big foyer, and he managed to do it. Managed to do it for a short time, and he said, "Wow, it was the first time." I would get any. I'd love to get somebody who thinks they can't do that, and I love working with them. Say, yeah, okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Is it true? Part of that is also what we talked about earlier. Because I hold that frequency, that really helps as well. But choice is the biggest thing that we have in this world. I mean, when I had my near-death experience, I had choice to go.
And
Really,
what made you choose to stay, so to speak, or even
what
to
made me choose to stay was interesting because an 8-year-old girl asked me that one time. What made me choose to stay was, I'm sorry, but there was no big tunnel or light or anything. There was just a sense that I
yeah,
could go or stay. Was my brother had just died 8 months earlier, and I thought, this is too much for my parents. And the next thing, I'm back in my body because I could see my body, and they'd already said their prayer. I was boom, back in and awake, and so I made the choice. And
so that,
you know,
that was
it's in,
in an unconscious state, so to speak.
actually we're in an unconscious
Yeah.
state now. We're in a conscious state.
Yeah. But
You
then
know,
moving into like when, okay, you're back into your body, and then that extended period of time, like, did it just go from, okay, I'm going to make the most of this, or did you go through, like, did you get pissed off, did you get frustrated, like, what was that tipping point that you said, okay, I'm
I
going
was
to,
just glad I was alive again.
fair enough, it's that simple,
No, I
like.
tell you, do you know what it was? Actually, it wasn't that, because you know what, the little girl who asked me that question, she said, "But why did you come back? It's nicer on the other side."
Yeah.
She knew. Anyway, no, I'll tell you what it was. My tipping point. My mother was disabled at the age of 30. She couldn't move her arms or legs and use them, move them. Yes, she could, but she couldn't use them. And so when I had this massive car accident, and all my body, I could move everything, I was delighted, and I was going to make the most of it, and I make the most of it. And when I run, I am so grateful that my body can run or play tennis or get out of bed or do yoga. I'm so grateful. I was so grateful that all of my body parts could be used. That was a tipping point. I was just grateful.
Brilliant. So we don't need to have a car accident to be grateful, do we,
Nope,
that our body can move?
absolutely.
Mm.
And you know, just very recently, that the my husband, who was my ex-husband, who was in the car with me at that point, and he was actually not hurt at all. He was on a ventilator, and I thought to myself, my God, I was grateful because I could use my body. But actually, we should just be grateful that we can breathe as well.
Mm.
I mean, take a breath. He was 6 months. A machine was breathing for him before he passed away. But like, if you wake up in the morning and you're breathing, isn't that something to be grateful for? And that you can breathe. 6 months of, wow, this guy can't breathe,
Mm.
is such a thing to be grateful for, especially with all of this, what's going on recently in the world.
Yeah.
Just being healthy is something to be grateful for.
Absolutely. It's health, all the cliches are true, our health is our wealth.
Absolutely. We've really found that out, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah. Just, and that, well, my sense is that gratitude you speak of, like, it's not, again, it's not intellectual, it's not go on and say, I am grateful, but it's something it's more than just in your head, you're feeling it in your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And didn't we learn um, in this period that it's all about choosing ourselves that really matters? So we had to choose to keep ourselves safe, and that was helping everybody else to keep safe. Wasn't that one of the biggest learning? That actually choosing others, going to visit them or whatever, was not the right choice. The choice was to keep yourself safe. Everybody keeping themselves safe helped everybody else, which was all choice, wasn't it?
Yes, so.
That's what they were saying. Be safe, keep yourself
These-
safe.
this is it. But ultimately, it's our, as you said, we don't need the external thing like that to happen. We can do this anytime.
Yeah. Yeah, just gratitude for being alive.
All very simple to do, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it
just
is.
given that time, or just even a few moments of reflection, isn't it? It doesn't have to be that. Sometimes I think people, can complicate and think it has to be this big, magnificent thing.
No,
It's just like enjoy the simple pleasures, or giving gratitude, whether it's silently or to another person. It doesn't really matter. It's
yeah,
more the feeling that we feel in the body.
absolutely.
Well, I'm very grateful to have had this conversation with you, Dr. Alweena. Dr. Alweena.
Thank you. I'm grateful that you chose me to have conversation with
Well, it was
you.
my choice, and it was your
Uh,
choice to say yes or no.
yeah,
Well, thank you for this fascinating discussion. We covered a lot. We covered quite a lot. There's a lot more we could go in
yeah,
on, but
absolutely.
I'll put the links of all to your website. It's the childcenteredmethod.com and
Simplephysicalliteracy.com
simple.
and attuning to full potential, which is my kinesiology that I've developed.
So we'll put all that down, and
Yeah.
anyone who's interested in potentially training, there's upcoming courses, I think in Ireland next year, March next year, isn't it?
Yeah, there's Child Centered Method. I start a new cycle, and that's March the 5th and the 6th. That starts a new cycle. Simple Physical Literacy is next week. So that's
Okay.
no, it's not next week. It's this Saturday. But
Okay.
no, they roll around, and attuning to full potential, which is a kinesiology that will
Yeah.
that's rolls around all year round. Yeah, it's
Brilliant.
all via Zoom nowadays, so it's anybody can come from anywhere.
So, my global audience can appreciate your work.
If they're on the right time zone, they sometimes don't like you when it's 4 a.m. in the morning. They have to get up.
Well, when it's important enough, when you want to do it,
Yeah,
time is irrelevant.
absolutely, absolutely.
Very good, very good. Well, thanks, Alweena, for coming on, and we never know, we might get you back on again in the future.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.